You know that feeling when you open up an incognito or private browsing window?
Oh yeah, the whole screen goes dark.
Right. The colors shift,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
get that little icon like the spy with the hat and glasses.
Yeah, the classic trench coat guy.
Exactly. And you get this immediate psychological cue that you are now, off the grid. You feel like a digital ghost. No footprints, no trace.
It is a very deliberate UI design choice. I mean, the browser is giving you a visual environment that basically mimics stepping into a soundproof vault.
But it's an illusion.
A massive one.
And that's exactly what we are shattering today. Welcome to this deep dive. Today we're taking a huge stack of technical architecture analyses, some threat vector assessments, and these major recent legal mandates. And well, we're looking at what actually happens behind that dark themed window.
Which is a lot more than people think.
Oh, for sure. We want to reconstruct exactly what it takes for you to actually stay private online. Because the gap between what we assume that spy icon means and what the software is actually engineered to do is just staggering.
It really is. And to understand how that privacy fails, we have to look at what incognito mode was actually built to accomplish in the first place.
Right. Where does it start?
So its primary engineering objective is this concept called local state isolation.
Local state isolation.
Yeah. The entire mechanism is designed strictly to prevent the persistent storage of browsing artifacts on your physical hard drive.
Which, makes sense historically, right? These modes were originally built for shared family computers.
Exactly.
Like you wanted to look for a birthday present for your spouse, or maybe look up a medical symptom.
Yeah.
Without it auto-filling in the search bar the next time someone opened the browser.
Right. You didn't want the next person at the keyboard to see it.
So it was built to hide your activity from the person sitting in the chair next, not to evade network surveillance.
That is the crucial distinction. When you start an incognito session, the browser creates an ephemeral, isolated memory allocation.
Okay, ephemeral meaning?
Meaning it sections off a piece of your volatile system RAM. So things like your DOM storage, which is how websites store data locally, your session cookies, your HTTP cache files, your search history, all of that is kept strictly within that volatile space.
Oh, I see.
And because RAM requires continuous power and is inherently temporary, the browser is programmed to instantly purge those memory references the second you close that final incognito window. Poof, gone.
Though even on the local machine, there are exceptions, aren't there?
Oh, absolutely.
Like if you initiate a download or if you create a bookmark while you're in incognito, those bypass that ephemeral RAM entirely, right?
Yep, they write directly and permanently to your local disk.
So if you download a PDF in incognito, it's just, sitting there in your standard downloads folder for anyone to find.
And that often catches people off guard. But the local machine is really just the tip of the iceberg here. The real vulnerability is the network.
Right.
Because incognito mode does absolutely nothing to alter your TCP/IP communication, your HTTP request headers, or server telemetry.
So what does this actually mean for you when you open your laptop? It sounds like incognito mode is basically just promising not to write anything down in your diary.
That's a good way to put it.
It's like closing the blinds in your house so your roommates can't see what you're doing, but leaving your front door wide open for the postman, the street cameras, and literally anyone walking by to look in.
Yes. And the street cameras in this case are your internet service provider, the ad networks, and your local LAN administrators.
So like a boss or a school IT department.
Exactly. If you are on a university Wi-Fi or your office network, the IT department sees your traffic exactly as they would in a normal window.
Wow.
Because incognito doesn't change the fundamental way your computer talks to the internet. Those network administrators, they see the raw IP packets leaving your machine.
So they know exactly where you're going.
Right. They see the server name indication headers, which essentially broadcast the name of the website you were trying to visit. And they see the plain text DNS requests asking for the IP address of that site. To the network, you aren't wearing a disguise at all.
And if it's that easy for the network to see us, you really have to wonder how tech companies got away with marketing this as private for so long.
Well, they kind of didn't, eventually.
Right, because that massive disconnect between the visual promise of the spy icon and the operational reality of all this data harvesting is what triggered a massive federal legal showdown.
Yes, it did. We saw this come to a head with a really landmark piece of litigation. The class action lawsuit, Chase & Brown et al. V. Google LLC, that was initiated in June 2020.
Okay, so a few years ago.
Right. The plaintiffs alleged that Google was actually violating federal wiretap laws and California privacy statutes by covertly intercepting and tracking user web activity, even when those users had explicitly enabled Chrome's Incognito mode.
Because the front door was left wide open, like we said. But how is Google specifically exploiting that open door?
The sheer scale of the architecture involved is what made this case so significant. The tracking wasn't just happening because users were visiting Google.com.
Right, it was broader than that.
Much broader. It was happening via background HTTP requests sent to Google servers by scripts, specifically Google Analytics and Google Ad Manager, that were embedded on millions of non-Google websites.
So wait, you're in Incognito, you go to a random blog or a news site to read an article thinking you were completely isolated.
But if that news site uses Google Analytics, your client browser automatically dispatched a background request to Google servers.
Without you doing anything.
Yep. And this transmitted your IP address, your precise request URIs, meaning the exact subpage you were on, and persistent tracking cookies. Google was vacuuming up this telemetry data globally, completely regardless of the browser state.
Man. And Google's initial defense was essentially pointing to the fine print, right?
Pretty much.
Like, they argued their general privacy policy permitted this, and they claimed Incognito merely meant browsing privately from other users of the same device. Basically saying, you know, we never promised you were invisible to the network.
Yeah, they leaned heavily on the idea that they were just acting as a passive infrastructure provider for those third-party websites.
But I've got to push back on that original defense, because the source material brings up a really damning point here.
Oh, about the paywalls.
Yes. So Google tried to argue that Incognito just meant browsing privately from the local machine. But if they were actively using heuristics and API quotas to detect if a client was in incognito mode just to block them with paywalls, which the settlement eventually forced them to stop doing, they clearly knew this was a separate identifiable state of browsing.
Exactly.
They knew you were in incognito, and they were tracking you anyway, adjusting their own server behavior based on that knowledge.
And the district judge saw that exact contradiction. Google's motions for summary judgment were totally rejected because they failed to adequately disclose this back-end data collection. They just couldn't sweep the background telemetry under the rug anymore.
So they had to settle.
Right. To avoid a massive, highly publicized trial, they reached a settlement in early 2024.
And the mandates from this settlement, I mean, they fundamentally changed the landscape of the browser.
They did. They were forced to dismantle major parts of their historical tracking apparatus.
What do they actually have to do?
First, Google had to delete or irreversibly de-identify billions of raw telemetry logs. So search histories, IP addresses, page view logs dating all the way back to 2016.
Wow, billions.
Yeah. Second, they had to change the Chrome splash page text. Starting in Canary version 122, it now explicitly admits that external data collection by websites in Google continues. The vague promises are just gone.
And technologically, they had to hardcode Chrome to block third-party cookies by default in incognito for at least 5 years, right?
Right. Correct. That prevents cross-site tracking scripts from referencing shared identifiers across different external domains.
Now, usually when we hear about these massive class action tech lawsuits, you expect to get like a check in the mail for a couple of bucks, but that didn't happen here.
No, it's really interesting. Unlike the Hubbard v. Google children's privacy suit, which had a $30 million fund, the Brown settlement had zero class cash payout. Zero. But it explicitly preserved the legal right of individual class members to file standalone civil lawsuits for monetary damages.
Oh.
Yeah. By not paying out a lump sum, Google basically opened the floodgates.
Yeah.
Facing 50,000 individual lawsuits for thousands of dollars each is arguably a much larger threat to their legal department than a single capped payout.
Yeah, that sounds like a nightmare for them.
Yeah.
So, okay, Google is forced to block third-party cookies by default in incognito now. You might hear that and think, you know, great, the lawsuit fixed it. The cookies are blocked, my local history is wiped. I really am a digital ghost.
If only it were that simple.
Right. Because if trackers can't use cookies anymore, they don't just give up, they evolve.
Exactly. We have fully entered the era of browser fingerprinting. Ad networks and tracking platforms realized that relying on cookies was becoming a losing battle, so they started extracting high-entropy client signatures from the hardware itself.
Wait, hardware?
Yes. They completely bypass the need to store a file on your computer entirely.
Okay, but how does a website look at my physical hardware through a browser window?
Yeah.
Like, how is that even possible?
Through standard browser APIs that were originally built to make the web interactive and visual. So one of the most prevalent methods is canvas fingerprinting.
Canvas fingerprinting.
Yeah. When you load a web page, the site can silently instruct your browser to draw hidden 2D graphics or text in the background using HTML5 Canvas elements. You never see it on your screen.
But why would drawing a hidden shape identify me?
Because every single computer renders those graphics slightly differently. Yeah. There are these microscopic variations in your specific graphics processing unit, your GPU, your display drivers, your anti-aliasing routines, which smooth out the edges of lines, even the subpixel rendering of your system fonts.
That is insane.
I know. So when the browser finishes drawing that hidden image, the tracking script hashes the pixels. It turns that uniquely rendered image into a unique string of characters.
Because my specific graphics card processes the math of drawing a curve slightly differently than your graphics card, that invisible image is basically a highly detailed photo ID unique to my machine.
That's exactly it. It is a unique pixel hash signature.
Yeah.
And the kicker for our topic today, an incognito window uses the exact same native GPU drivers as your standard window.
Of course it does.
Right. Your hardware doesn't change when the screen goes dark. So your canvas fingerprint in incognito is 100% identical to your fingerprint in standard mode.
That is just wild. They don't even need a cookie. They just ask my computer to do some math. And the way my computer fails to do the math perfectly gives away exactly who I am.
Yeah, and it goes far beyond graphics too. The WebGL API exposes your actual GPU vendor strings. The WebAudio API measures floating point calculation variances when processing a complex audio oscillator in the background.
Wait, audio too?
Oh yeah! Even the way your system measures the exact rendered dimensions of Unicode fonts gives away your installed font inventory.
Wow.
And before an HTTP request even fully executes, server-side systems can look at the initial TLS handshake. When your browser first connects securely to a site, it sends a list of cryptographic cipher suites it supports. Trackers generate JA3 or JA4 hashes based on that initial handshake, essentially profiling your machine before the website even begins to load.
They're identifying us by the microscopic floating point math our audio drivers do in the background. That's honestly terrifying.
It's extremely sophisticated.
And Incognito does absolutely nothing to hide it.
And nothing at all.
But the source material points out another massive protocol-level vulnerability we have to talk about: WebRTC.
Ah, yes. Web real-time communication. This is the protocol that allows us to do peer-to-peer audio and video right in the browser without downloading extra plugins.
So it's what makes browser-based video calls possible.
Exactly. But to establish a direct connection between two devices, especially when both are sitting behind network firewalls or home routers, WebRTC uses something called STUN servers.
Okay, so think of a STUN server like a digital switchboard operator. When a site initiates a WebRTC request, your browser sends data packets to these STUN servers just to figure out your public wide area network IP address and your local LAN IP address.
Right.
It's basically shouting out to the internet, hey, what's my actual address so I can connect to this video call?
And the protocol uses direct UDP requests to prioritize speed for real-time video and audio, but there is a fatal flaw here for privacy-conscious users.
And this involves VPNs, right?
Yes. If you are using a virtual private network, a VPN, to hide your IP address, these WebRTC SSCN requests often bypass the encrypted VPN tunnel entirely. Because UDP prioritizes connection speed, it can route outside the tunnel, leaking your real ISP-assigned public IP address directly to remote web scripts.
So you could be paying for a VPN, thinking your IP is safely masking you as being in Switzerland, but WebRTC just whispers your actual home IP address to the website in the background anyway.
Exactly. And activating incognito mode does not disable WebRTC.
Of course it doesn't.
But it gets even worse because of a structural choice in Chromium-based browsers called the extension trap.
Okay, this part completely blew my mind when I was going through the notes.
It's so counterintuitive. Chromium browsers, which include Google Chrome, automatically disable all user-installed extensions the moment you enter incognito mode.
Right.
The surface logic makes sense, right? They don't want a rogue third-party coupon extension reading your private banking session, so they just apply a blanket ban for security.
But think about the extensions privacy-conscious users actually run. You open an incognito window thinking you're being extra secure, but you've actually just stripped away all your armor.
Exactly.
Your VPN connectors, your ad blockers like uBlock Origin, your WebRTC leak shields Chromium disables them all by default.
You are suddenly completely exposed. Because your defensive tools are turned off, you are actually less secure against IP leaks and malicious tracking scripts in Incognito than you are in your standard browsing mode.
To fix this, you have to manually go into your browser's extension settings, click on your specific trusted security tools, and explicitly toggle the Allow in Incognito permission. If you don't do that, your shields just drop the moment the screen goes dark.
So we have thoroughly dismantled the myth of out-of-the-box incognito mode. The local slate gets wiped, but the network sees everything. Third-party cookies are blocked, but hardware fingerprints give you away. And your privacy extensions get disabled by default.
Man, it's time to build this back up. We need to give you an actionable, layered framework to take back control. We have to move from a mindset of just local sanitization to actual network-level anonymity. And it really starts with choosing the right tool, because not all browsers handle this the same way. The source material has a fascinating breakdown of the different browser philosophies here.
Yeah, let's compare the approaches. We know Chrome retains safe browsing, but doesn't natively spoof fingerprints or block WebRTC. Firefox, though, takes a structurally different approach.
What do they do?
It uses total cookie protection, which isolates cookies into domain-specific containers, preventing them from talking to each other. But more importantly, Firefox gives you deep engine-level control.
Right, the hidden menus.
Yep. You can go into the Hidden About config menu and completely kill WebRTC at the engine level by toggling the media.peerconnection.enabled switch to false. It also natively restricts Canvas access to fight fingerprinting.
What I found fascinating was Apple's approach with Safari for Mac and iPhone users. Instead of just blocking the Canvas fingerprint, Safari employs dynamic Canvas noise injection.
Oh, that is such a cool feature.
Right. It subtly alters the math of that hidden 2D graphic we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
It purposefully ruins the math differently every time, so your fingerprint constantly changes. Plus, if you use iCloud, plus C, they have Private Relay, which is a dual-hop proxy that hides your IP and your destination from both your ISP and the website.
And then Brave takes a similar philosophy to Safari, but applies it across the board. It randomizes your hardware API outputs every session, and Brave has a really unique feature, a private window that actually routes your traffic through the Tor network.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, giving you onion routing, bouncing your signal across multiple encrypted nodes instead of just doing local isolation.
So, step one for you. Consider upgrading your browser choice, and definitely enable your trusted security extensions in private mode. Step 2 is plugging those protocol leaks. The sources emphasize enabling encrypted DNS, also known as DNS over HTTPS, using non-logging resolvers.
Right, because standard DNS is like an open phone book. When you type in a website, your computer asks the network for the IP address in plain text. Your ISP can read that request. DNS over HTTPS puts that request inside a securely encrypted envelope.
And you'd combine that with a VPN, right?
Yes. Combine that with a system-wide VPN that has a strict kill switch. So if the VPN connection drops, your computer immediately cuts internet access rather than instantly leaking your real IP address to the open web.
Now, I want to ask a grounding question here. We're looking at these threat vector assessments, and they discuss strict anonymity against nation-state actors, corporate surveillance, and protections for whistleblowers. For the everyday user, jumping straight to a specialized stateless operating system like Tails or Unix sounds incredibly intimidating. Is that really necessary just to stop targeted ads?
Well, it comes down to modeling your personal threat level. For the everyday user simply trying to stop targeted ads, prevent cross-site tracking, and maybe keep their ISP from selling their browsing habits, the sweet spot is exactly what we just described. Using a privacy-focused browser like Firefox or Brave, running a reputable system-wide VPN, enabling encrypted DNS, and keeping a high-quality blocker like uBlock Origin active in private mode.
So that's enough for most people.
Yeah, that framework handles the vast majority of commercial surveillance.
But if your threat model is higher, if you are an international user in a high-threat environment, a journalist protecting a source, or a whistleblower,
then standard commercial browsers are fundamentally inadequate.
even with all those extensions.
Even then, because no matter how many extensions you run, the browser still sits on top of your host operating system, which is constantly leaking hardware telemetry. For true operational security, you have to separate your browsing entirely from your host hardware signatures.
Which requires purpose-built platforms.
Exactly. Platforms like the Tor browser, LibreWolf, or live stateless operating systems like Tails or Unix.
How does a stateless OS even work?
The architecture is remarkable. You boot the entire operating system from a USB drive. It runs entirely in your computer's RAM, forces transparent network encryption through the Tor network, and the moment you pull the USB drive out, the RAM clears. It leaves absolutely zero physical or digital trace on the host machine.
That's incredible. And it solves the fingerprinting problem by standardizing everything, right? Instead of trying to hide your unique fingerprint, these systems force every single user to have the exact same fingerprint. You blend into a crowd where everyone looks identical to the trackers.
Exactly. Knowledge is most valuable when understood and applied. Now that you understand the mechanics behind the curtain, you can actively architect your own protection instead of relying on a false sense of security provided by a dark-themed UI.
Let's bring this all together. What have we uncovered on this deep dive? First, incognito mode only wipes the local slate clean. It hides your history from the next person to use your keyboard, not from the network infrastructure.
Yeah.
Second, the legal landscape, highlighted by that Brown v. Google settlement, is finally forcing tech giants to admit to and alter their server-side telemetry habits. And third, true network privacy requires active layered defenses to prevent sophisticated hardware fingerprinting and protocol leaks like WebRTC. But I want to leave you with one final kind of wild philosophical puzzle that this source material brings up. We talked about how tracking has gotten so microscopic that the subtle floating point math of our audio drivers and the exact rendering of our system fonts give away our identity.
Right.
If that's the case, does that mean the only way to achieve true privacy in the future is for hardware manufacturers to make every single computer, every graphics card, and every audio chip perform exactly identical, flawed math?
No.
To be perfectly anonymous, we might have to lose everything that makes our machines uniquely powerful and hide in a crowd of absolute digital clones. Something to mull over the next time you boot up. We highly encourage you to go check those browser and extension settings today. Stop being a digital ghost with the blinds closed and the front door wide open. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.